As Heather mentioned, I'm a librarian here at SMU. I'm the head of information literacy. For those of you who maybe don't know what information literacy really is, that means that I help educate people about how to think about their information, how to find it, how to evaluate it. And so a lot of what we do is working with students in the classroom, in their academic classes, helping them with academic research. But one of my personal passions and the thing that I bring to our workshop series that are open to our students, our faculty, and our community is learning about everyday information skills that help us navigate our world. And so today, I am going to talk to you about our news media. I know, instantly like, oh. So, and I'm going to invite you into my classroom. And so, like every good librarian, I do a lot of research. I'm going to be throwing a lot of research at you because I like what I say to be evidence-based, so prepare yourself. So I'm going to start with a study on the total Facebook engagement of the top 20 election stories in 2016. So, mainstream news, we had 7.3 million likes, comments, shares, and clicks. Fake news, we had a lot more than mainstream news. And then I'm going to counter that with the next study that asked, how confident are you that you can tell real news from fake news? Somewhat confident. Very confident. I love that the men are just so confident about this. It's like women are like, God, I'm not sure. I'm somewhat confident. That is a lot of people. That is most people. As most people are confident. Who is doing all this sharing on Facebook of the fake news stories? Who is doing that? So we have a fake news problem. And the thing is that even if you're not actively reading fake news, even if you're not falling for fake news, the fact that it's out there is coloring our perception of our news media in general. So let's look at this study. Out of all the news you see reported, how much of it do you believe is made up or fake? Some is fake. 40%. 40% of people think some of the news is fake. A lot is fake. 21%. So we are seeing fake news everywhere. Then is this a problem because that we see this fake news everywhere because of the memes that are out there? Is it the memes, the tweets, the Facebook posts, foreign agents coming in and planting these, messages through social media? Is that what's coloring our perception that our news media is so much fake? Okay. So, do traditional news sources, so I'm talking newspapers, radio, online news magazines, do they occasionally or regularly report fake news? This is a very high number to me. We see fake news everywhere, even in our traditional news sources. And we can't talk about our news media problems without talking about biased news, of course. And I think at this point, I need to distinguish between biased news and fake news. When I first started teaching media literacy a couple years ago, this seemed more clear than it is now, and so I am going to define that. So fake news is false. It's fabrication. It is actual false facts. Biased news is true. It is true facts, but it's facts presented within a certain perspective that advocates potentially for a specific viewpoint. So is there a great deal of political bias in news reporting? I didn't even think I needed to throw this statistic in here. I think we know what this is going to say. And if we compare it to 1989, yeah. This is actually, this number, this is an all-time high ever since this particular statistic has been recorded. We are at an all-time high for seeing bias in our news as well. So, you are not imagining things. There is bias out there. There is fake news out there. And so let's look at some examples of this. And I, as a librarian, I like to categorize things. So I've categorized some different types of things that you might see. I think it's helpful. So manipulated images and videos. This is from the last election. You can see the manipulated image on the left and the original image on the right. This was something flying around social media. Images are particularly impactful, and I think because of the impact of an image, I think we sometimes stop to think when we see these things. Selective sourcing. A reporter has a choice when they write a story as to who they use for their sources. And it's good journalistic practice to use commonly accepted sources. But you might decide, I'm going to use this particular source because it can help push an agenda that I have. So when you have selective sourcing, you're pushing a particular agenda by who you choose to represent as being an expert. So you know I was going to talk about Breitbart. There's this Breitbart News story. And within this story, their expert source is the American College of Pediatricians. This looks very authoritative. This is a group of pediatricians that are in this group. And within the story, this particular group is held up as being the equivalent rival group of the American Academy of Pediatricians, which is the one that we all know about. So if you actually go to this website and read their about page, this is within their mission. We recognize the basic father-mother unit within the context of marriage to be the optimal setting for childhood development. So this is an actual political group that has a political and moral agenda that is being used as an expert source in a scientific context. So, and this is something you would want to know when you're looking at the sources used for that story. Advertising as news. So for those of you, I'm talking about native advertising. And if you haven't heard about native advertising before, it is an advertisement that is written and designed to look exactly like the publication that it appears within. So it is content. It looks like the layout from that news magazine. And I'm going to read you this quote that I found on and I have to say, I am the librarian for the advertising department here, and they are great, wonderful, very moral people. But I love them. So I'm going to read you this quote from a digital media solutions company. Newspapers and news sites have a reputation for being trustworthy sources of information, but marketers can buy a portion of that trustworthiness and use it to achieve their business goals. So that is native advertising. So we have an example here. This is Forbes magazine. And the two stories on the bottom that are circled are actually advertisements. And the story in the middle is the Forbes story. And I think it's pretty much almost impossible to tell the difference. The FTC does require that you put a disclosure notice here. The disclosure is the fact that they say it's a brand voice. But when you see sponsored content from our advertisers, et cetera, powered by Outbrain, those are all actual advertisements. There was a 2016 study that was done that 8% of the participants did not recognize an article as advertising, even with a disclosure notice. 8% of people recognized it. So omission, and I think we know what this is when you're not covering a story, you're leaving parts of the story out. So I have a Fox News story here that U.S. knew that the Libya attack was Al-Qaeda. This particular story was covered by the major right-leaning news media. This story was not covered within the major left news media. It was either not covered, it was buried, or it was covered late. So the way that this story was chosen to be represented was very different. And there are stories that I can tell from the other side of the aisle too. It's not something that, oh, the liberal news media always leaves things out. The conservative news media always leaves things out. They all do. They all do this. And the problem with omission is that if you only get your news from one source, or you only trust one source, you don't know the whole narrative. You're not seeing the other stories about our country that people are reading. Labeling. And this is how we use terms really colors our perception of those things. So, and we hear this all the time, undocumented immigrants versus, illegal aliens. Are you calling somebody an extremist? Are you calling them ultra-liberal? What do those things really mean? Story framing. This is when you're taking specific details and highlighting them over others. So in this particular story, it was decided to elevate the detail that this bomber was a supporter of Trump. Is that fair? You're directly associating that with the president. And this comment, now, this person really hates the Washington Post, but this comment says, was this talked about with Republican congressional baseball shooter? And I went back and checked, and this commenter is in fact correct, that the Washington Post did not cover it in the same way. And I think we know what spin is. We see it all the time. I could have used any online news magazine, 24-hour cable news. This is when you're representing subjective opinions about objective facts. So this particular story is very much subjective, and there's no way of telling that that is opinion writing. Back in the day, we used to have editorials. It was a different page of the paper. And we've blurred these lines now. And I think because the publishers blur those lines and the news outlets blur those lines, we don't see the distinctions either, and we fail to question the arguments that are being posed to us. So, and then there's this. This is actually a campaign, a political campaign. So we can't even agree what's fake, real, or biased anymore, and we're reading from different sides of the coin. So, and the problem is that is weakening our media. And I knew you needed some good news at this point, but there actually is good news to be found out there. That is, if we can recognize it. Are they telling you their sources? Are they being transparent? Are they retracting? Are they trying to be objective? Or is the news media trying to promote an agenda? Are they promoting a balanced perspective? And because I had to find a study. There was actually a study done that was done through crowdsourcing and ad that they found that actually these major news outlets are largely similar, more similar than we think. Though it's not as biased as we thought. So we really need to look at our personal habits, our personal bias, because we have our own bias. We have cognitive bias. We tend to believe the things that we already believe. We tend to value the information that confirms what we already believe. We don't read stuff. 59% of links on Twitter were not actually clicked on. And we don't read outside our comfort zone. We prefer biased news sources, even though we say we want unbiased news sources. And we don't remember things well. So even when you've been exposed to fake news, you might forget later that it was fake. You might say, oh yeah, I just remember that thing. So can technology save us? Unfortunately, no. Technology is part of the problem, and I don't know how much it's going to be a part of the solution. Mostly it's a game of whack-a-mole with fake news, and it shifts what it looks like all the time. We can delete accounts, they're going to be recreated. So what is the solution? Of course, librarians all over the world, when this whole problem came up, said information literacy is the solution. Personal responsibility, education, analytical thinking is the solution. You're less likely to fall for these fake news headlines when you slow down and analyze what you're looking at. We can overcome confirmation bias if you stop and slow down and think. So, as your librarian, I'm going to give you some quick tips. Of course, research the source. You know, what study are they referring to? Who is this publication? What do they stand for? It might involve doing a reverse image search. It might find, where's the source of this image? It might find out, who is this news magazine? When was their website created? Fake news websites are fly-by-night. They'll be very recent. Go to the About page. Read their platform. What is their actual mission? What do they stand for? And here's my second piece of advice. Read across your sources. Don't just stay on the one thing and try to evaluate that. Google it. Move beyond the page. You will find out a whole lot more very quickly. And this is actually what fact checkers do. And we have a lot of great fact-checking sites out there that, especially for the fake news, they usually pick up and report on right away. So this is Snopes, there's Hoaxslayer, there's factcheck.org, PolitiFact, there's lots of places that are actively fact-checking these things. And read from the other side of the aisle. Expose yourself to more than just your comfort zone media. One of the resources I like to really promote with my classes is this allsides.com. They take the top issues of the time, and as you can see, they give you stories from the left, from the center, from the right. You don't even have to do any work. It's all right there for you. So that if your personal media of choice doesn't cover a story or presents it from a certain lens, you're much more easily able to see that if you look at how it's written in a different news organization. So we like to blame the media for giving us all this bias and the fake news that's out there, but I think we really need to look at our own personal responsibility within the media that we ingest, slow down, think about what you're reading, and share this with others. Share it with your kids, share it with your coworkers. When somebody posts something that you see online that is fake and you know it, tell them, ask them to take it down. And don't share the stuff just because you think it's funny. That's actually a statistic out there that people are promoting this because it's funny. So our news media is very serious. We need to treat it that way. So thank you.